Brandon Victor Dixon. You co-starred in Jesus Christ Superstar as Judas, and now you're nominated for an Emmy, along with 12 other nominations for the show at the Emmys this year. Now, a lot of us thought it would do well at the Emmys, but I think even then we were probably a lot of us underestimating it. What was your reaction, not just to your nomination, but to all the support the cast and crew got?
I was extremely excited. I mean, the project was so fun for us. We put so much into it, and to have such an overwhelming positive reaction to the show was a wonderful thing for us. Really thrilled to see so many recognized for all that hard work. And really, 13 means that every department, everybody who was working on it really put their heart and soul into it, and that the quality of the work and the love that was put into the work came across. So we were excited. I mean, we were sending group texts and in emails, we're making jokes, and it was really, really fun.
13 nominations, that's a lot of people on that group text then.
It absolutely was. And then
is your phone still pinging from that now with so many people?
Well, then we veered off and we were making fun of, Sir Tim Rice and Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber about how England lost in the World Cup, and it became a whole thing.
Well, now you're a musical theater veteran. So what was your familiarity with this particular show, Jesus Christ Superstar, before the opportunity came for you to play this role?
I was actually only familiar with the opening number, the song that I first sing, Heaven on Their Minds. I'd known it, I'd heard it years ago and always loved the song, but I had never seen the show and I had never heard the rest of the album.
So what was the process of learning it, discovering it? Did you research a lot of past productions or stagings of it?
No, I mean, so Andrew gives Judas a fair bit of leeway in terms of interpreting the songs and the melody. So I listened to a couple versions and it's settled on the Carl Anderson Judas from the original motion picture, and really used him as my inspiration for what I did with the character vocally. But I really tried to focus on the words, the relationship between the characters, between Jesus, Judas, Mary, and really Judas' relationship with to help inform the kind of vocal choices and acting choices I was going to make with the text.
You've done performances on stage and you've done performances on television, but this production was kind of a hybrid of both. You're performing for a live audience, but at the same time you're being followed by TV cameras that are covering it for TV audiences at home. How did that experience differ compared to work you've done in theater versus TV?
In respect, on the foundation, it was very similar. I mean, they designed the process to operate and be built like a Broadway show, but the amount of technical elements involved that needed to happen on such a specific time scale just kind of ratcheted up, I think, the stacking of our days. It just increased the density of the time that we were spending with one another. I mean, considering all the elements, it's an extraordinary technological achievement that everybody was able to make everything hit at the right time on that final, that final live moment. But in general, it felt very much like a theater production in how we built it. The execution of it very much like a television show.
And was the rehearsing and preparation for it much different than you would go through for a Broadway show?
No, not at all. I mean, it's the same kind of time and also just the way it was structured. I mean, the majority of the performers in the room had done a number of Broadway shows. I mean, Sarah, the ensemble, we'd all done shows or the versions of the shows. So I think, so it all felt very familiar, the process to us. And then it's when we started to the technical elements that the more television, the televised version began to come to life.
And then what was it like working with John Legend, who hasn't had as much experience with live theater, but of course has plenty of experience with live music performances and music in general?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it's very clear from all John does how dedicated he is to his work and how much he puts his passion into his work, and to see him do that in a medium that was not specifically his. It's not his music, it's not his vocal styling. And so to see him adapt that to Tim and Andrew's work was really fantastic and inspiring to watch how he gave as much of himself to someone else's work as he does to his own. And I think both him being the producer, one of the producers of the project as well, this helps lay the foundation for the kind of project that we were going to be engaged in, that he gave himself so fully to the process like that.
And one of the biggest differences between this and a Broadway show is that while, when you're on Broadway, you're doing 8 shows a week, but in this case, it's literally one and done. So you kind of sink or swim. What was it like on the day? Like, did that feel like a lot more pressure than a normal production?
Didn't feel like it felt a little bit like a little bit more pressure, but not entirely. Particularly because we had done a version Saturday night with a full audience that was recorded, so you kind of felt like, all right, I'm halfway there, So, but we felt ready. I mean, the way the team prepped us, we felt ready to go. I mean, the first moment that I was like, all right, are you really? Was really right before I walked out for Superstar, and I was like, and at that point, I was like, you done now.
Yeah, and the character of Judas does run such an emotional gamut. It's such a dark emotional character in many places, but then he does have that joyous final number. What was it like preparing for those different tones, those different levels of emotion that you're portraying as this character?
I mean, you really walk the path, following the emotions, and allow myself to stick with the love for Jesus, so that everything that pushed me in the other direction was able to ratchet me up in a way that I think gave us colors, and showed the human challenges of loving somebody and wanting things to work out positively for everybody, but losing control of the situation and of yourself. And I think that's something that we can all relate to and connect.
And one of the most emotional moments in the show is Judas's eventual death, and he has that one final number, and you're climbing up the scaffolding until he takes his own life. What was that like? In rehearsals and in the moment, like was that the most challenging part of the show for you to really dig into?
In certain respects, yes, it provided challenges both in terms of it's vocally and physically challenging. But you also know that you've got to come back and you got to sing and perform Superstar, so you can't blow yourself out, on that number. And also, I think you also recognize that what's most engaging about that number is the process that you're going through. Going from a process of doing God's will and doing Jesus's will and understands what he's doing, to being shocked at the horror of what he's witnessing, the acts that he's committed. My God, I saw him. He looked 3/4 dead, and beat so hard. My head is like, God, we did this, but look at him now, and like having to live through it takes him to another place, of what he had to do with his friend, this person that he loves, and then he recognizes that they're both being condemned, but I'm going to be damned. He'll be celebrated and I'll be damned, damned for all time, which is the thing that he had prayed about from the beginning. Like, I'll do this, but please don't say I'm damned for all time. And so it always raised interesting questions for me about, why we do the things we do, and whether or not we're walking the right path, and the things we believe in bring about our destruction or the destruction of the people around us, and how, we need to focus on our ideologies and focus on whether they truly lift us and the people around them, or whether they struggles that make it harder for us to come through sometimes. I think those are the questions that I would answer. That I would ask about myself throughout the process.
And after the end of the show, it's very emotional with Judas's death and Jesus's crucifixion, and then to come out for that final Superstar number feels very much like a catharsis for the audience in a way. Did it feel that way for you to kind of bring the show to this kind of celebratory place after all that intensity?
Just the nature of it absolutely does feel like a catharsis. It's a real release, I think, after some of the focus of the numbers that come before it. But also it operates it's technically supposed to operate as a fever dream within the piece. Judas dies, and in Jesus's distress, he is kind of seeing Judas and this message from Judas. Every time I look at you, I don't understand why you let the things you did get so out of hand. It's like, and so I think it's interesting in how it's constructed, but it definitely was a release for me as a performer to have gotten through the suicide, which is a challenging thing, to be able to come through and studded in silver, bedazzled glory. Sing the song with the whole ensemble. It was a real celebration.
And that costume in the end, I mean, all the costumes in the show are really memorable, but especially that one in the end that you're wearing for Superstar is so kind of bold, and there aren't many people in many shows that could pull that off. What was your feeling? Did you feel like really empowered in that costume?
I felt like yes, baby. I felt like yes. That's why I threw up my sock. I threw up my gauntlets. If I'm wearing gauntlets, I got to give it to him.
And what was it like during, when you were originally seeing the costumes for the show and fittings, and what were you thinking about them initially?
I mean, I've worked with Paul Tazewell for over 10 years now. I know how genius he is, and so I was excited about them. I loved the mock-ups. I thought they were really cool. I thought they were inventive, and I trusted that, even though I was like, I wouldn't wear this on the street necessarily, I trust Paul Tazewell, and he gonna put fabric on my body, and we're gonna hit the stage.
Now that you've done Jesus Christ Superstar, and it was, of course, successful, given these Emmy nominations, certainly, would you be interested in doing more live TV? Are there any dream roles you might like to play?
I'm not sure exactly. I don't know that I have anything specifically in mind, but it's definitely a format and a medium that I enjoy, and I'd definitely be open to doing it again if they chose the right one.
Now, in addition to, of course, Jesus Christ Superstar, as I mentioned, you're a veteran of the Broadway stage, and not just on the stage, but you're a producer as well. You actually won a Tony for producing Hedwig and the Angry Inch. What spurred your interest in producing? How did you get into that in general?
I mean, it's just a greater another extension of creating work. You go from focusing on your scenes and the lines and the lyrics and the music to thinking about the show as a whole, and how everything kind of works in concert. And so it's both in terms of expanding the vision of how you create, and also it's a matter of making sure that you retain a level of ownership over what you create. I've done projects that are about Ray Charles, Berry Gordy, Sam Cooke, and a lot of these artists, they were the first Black musicians to own their own publishing or own their own record labels, to own their masters. And because it means that I can help support work in other ways. Maybe I don't need to be in a thing or star in a thing, but I can connect the pieces that can help make this story come to life. And that's something that's very important for me. Every time I step forward, I look to see who can bring on their small steps.
I always think it's always a smart move when actors produce, because it also gives you the freedom, I'm sure, as you go along to make opportunities for yourself even.
It certainly does, but even as a producer, you're still working to create the opportunity. Just as an actor, you're working to find the opportunity. As a producer, you're still working to manifest the opportunity. But you're right. It's I think with anything, I was just talking with one of my writers about this. It's about stepping from the place where you're waiting for something into a place where you can create something. A lot of us feel like I'm waiting for somebody to give me that job, or to give me the check, or to give me that opportunity. It's about stepping out of the place of waiting into the place of creating.
Now, one of your most memorable roles on Broadway, you actually spent a year as Aaron Burr in Hamilton, which, following the phenomenon of Hamilton, what was it like stepping into that performance and that role, which is quite different from most other musical theater roles that anyone could play or sing?
I mean, it was a lot of fun. The thing is, it's different. It's different in that in its specifics, but it's very, very similar to Judas. There are a lot of similarities in the look. The one thing that's very apparent in Hamilton, the genius of Hamilton is what comes through clearly is the knowledge of Lin-Manuel Miranda. And you see his study of the craft. So you see Jesus Christ Superstar in there. You see Les Miserables in there. You see Rent. He knows how to take the tools of the people who come before them and then transform them into something new. And so, in getting into the character of Aaron Burr, there are the specifics of Aaron Burr, but still there's how he operates as an anti-hero within the structure of the narrative, which is very similar to how Judas operates as an anti-hero within the structure of Superstar. So it was interesting for me to kind of go into this very layered material and discover something new for myself. So I enjoyed the exploration of that because Hamilton has so many layers, I was able to be so many different types of Aaron Burr. I was arrogant Aaron Burr. I was broken Aaron Burr. I was emotionally restricted Aaron Burr. I was conniving Aaron Burr. I was clever Aaron Burr. You could really, depending on the mood of the day, I could shift the colors, but you could still find your way through the story. It was a great joy.
And there was a moment, while you were playing Aaron Burr, where sort of made headlines when Mike Pence attended a show, and you and the cast addressed him directly, and I think that probably got blown out of proportion to a certain degree. What do you, looking back on that, and looking back on where American history has gone now, what do you think about that moment and preparing for that moment, and really standing up for people who maybe aren't as have that platform?
I'm very proud of that moment. I'm very proud of our production wanting to use their power and their influence to say something unifying to every member of our country and also the people of the world, because we are dealing with on a microcosmic level what everybody in this globe is dealing with on a macrocosmic level. And so I was very proud of us for doing that, and it's something that I would do again. And the thing that was most important about it is that it resonated throughout the world, and it resonated with people who are seeking opportunities to speak out and speak for others. It resonated with people who felt like they couldn't speak out or speak for others or themselves. And so I'm hoping that it will continue to serve as a reminder that we must always step up. The more we advocate for somebody or someone else, the less we'll have to advocate for ourselves. And also, I hope it will help people continue to recognize their mutual intersectionality. We're all fighting for a place at the table.
Well, I want to congratulate you again on Jesus Christ Superstar and your Emmy nomination, and wish you the best of luck on that and with every other nomination the show has. And thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you. I enjoyed this. I hope it was positive and informative, and I look forward to the rest of the road. And thank you everybody who's been supporting Jesus Christ Superstar and our Emmy nominations, and keep supporting us.